Okay. So, welcome to this event in the series of linguistic seminars at IUSS. It's a great pleasure and a great honor to have Anna Borghi. Introducing Anna Borghi is quite a complex task because there is so much to say about her. But I would like to start by emphasizing that she's a cognitive scientist in the most authentic and broad sense. She's a professor of psychology at the University of Rome, La Sapienza. She originally graduated in philosophy. She works on language, so she touches all the corner of the hexagon of cognitive science, I would say. Her main field of investigation is concept representation, and particularly the representation of abstract concept. On this, I think she's the greatest expert worldwide. She has an impressive number of publications on this. She has coordinated European grants on the same topic. And since her publication list, like I said, is enormous, and it's impossible to go through it in details, but I would like to mention her latest book, published last year by Cambridge University Press, which is titled The Freedom of Words. A beautiful title with an abstract concept indeed, that make us think about words. For instance, my imagery when I read The Freedom of Words is the picture of words flying and moving freely in the space. But actually, as she says in the presentation of the book says, the book is about how language and body interact to support the representation of concepts like freedom. So there's a double meaning of this word. The seminar of today deals with some of these topics, and we really look forward to hearing you, Anna. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for the very generous introduction. And I'm really happy to be here. And I really had the feeling yesterday that we speak the same language. So I'm really happy and honored to be here. So I changed a little bit the title. So the title originally was Abstract Concept, Vagueness and Social Interaction, whereas it is Abstract Concept, Uncertainty and Social Interaction. I'll tell you something on vagueness, but we are working on it, and I wasn't ready yet to focus on that. So since Valentina spoke about the freedom of words, I would like to start with a passage by Virginia Woolf, who mentions exactly this, that words are really free. And she says words are the wildest, freest, most irresponsible, most unteachable of all things. Of course, you can catch them and sort them and place them in alphabetic order in dictionaries. But words do not live in dictionaries. They live in the mind. And how do they live in the mind? Variously and strangely, much as human beings live, by ranging hither and thither, by falling in love and mating together. It is true that they are much less bound by ceremony and convention than we are. So that was, that is the starting point. So and it will also be the end point. So that's the main, if I had to summarize the message of this seminar, it's something along this line. So the outline of the presentation. As Valentina said, I've been working on categorization. So I'll tell you something just to introduce how we intend concepts and how flexible concepts are. Then I will focus on abstract concepts and on a proposal that we made, which is called Word as Social Tools, what or what, call it as you want. and focus specifically on abstract concept and social interaction. I will go into possible different kinds of social interaction, and a possible proposal of partition of abstract concept based on this idea of the importance of social interaction for concepts. And in the last part, I'll focus on the notion of uncertainty, so the idea that abstract concepts evoke uncertainty, and at the same time evoke the need to rely on others. And in doing this, I will, the presentation will be theoretical, but I will obviously mention some evidence pertaining it. So let me start with concepts and flexibility. And I'd like to make an example to give you an idea of what do we intend with conceptual flexibility. What are concepts? They are the basic units of our knowledge. One debated issue is, are they stable? Are they variable? Do they vary across situations? Do they vary a lot across people, etc.? Do they vary as a function of the social context? And let me make an example. An example is an example from a study we did on COVID during the period of COVID. So words related to COVID, in our view, are an excellent example of conceptual flexibility. Why? Because words related to COVID spread very rapidly, and in short time, many people became very experts on notions that until that time were not known at all. And at the same time, something I will go back later, people felt they knew more than they effectively did because they felt surrounded by experts knowing more. So we heard a bunch of people speaking of exponential growth or something like that, even if they didn't know what exponential growth was. We heard a lot of people speaking about that. And during COVID, we did some studies, and in one of these, we asked ourselves, how do we represent words and concepts related to COVID? And how does this affect previous knowledge on illness? And so we had 75 participants. It was the first lockdown. You are all familiar, probably not all were in it. I don't know whether everybody was in Italy, so it was one of the first lockdowns. So the period of March, April 2020. And we had a feature listing task with many, many different words. Here I'm going to focus only on words related with COVID. So there were COVID-19, illness, virus, tumor, flu, and fever, these 6 words. And participants were asked a bunch of other questions related to their perceived risk, the frequency of access to news. We submitted them with some scales related to interoception, etc. I'm not going into this. I'm just going into an analysis we did based on what the features produced by people. So they were asked to produce to list features related to these words. And this is a correspondence analysis in which you can see that the first dimension, which can be read horizontally, you can see that there is an opposition. The first dimension explains 50% of the variance. There is an opposition between COVID-19 on one side. I don't know whether I'm able to point to it. Yes. COVID-19 and flu on this side, which are characterized by pandemics and a virus, which oppose to tumor and to death, which are on the opposite side, as you can see. On the second dimension, you see an opposition between COVID-19. The second dimension can be. No, you cannot see the pointer. Okay. On the second dimension, you can see an opposition between. Point to the screen. Right. I have to. Okay. On the second dimension, you can see the opposition between COVID-19 and death, which is here. So opposed to flu, fever, and disease. So basically, why did I want to mention this example? This example seems to show that this new notion of COVID-19 led people to reframe their previous knowledge on illness. So COVID is in the middle. It is not a severe illness on one side. On the other side, it is severe. So it somehow leads people to reconceptualize, rethink of their previous notion of illnesses. So this was just to underline the fact that concepts are not something stable, but rather vary depending on the situation, etc. And this is just an extreme example to show this. So the semantic networks related to illnesses changed based on the introduction of these new words. So concepts are dynamic, and there is no opposition, severe and not severe illnesses that characterize previous knowledge of people, but it has changed. Okay, so but we are going to focus on abstract concepts here. So I'm going to focus on abstract concepts. And we typically, first I would like to define them, and we typically distinguish between abstraction and abstractness. So what do I mean with abstraction? Consider, for example, the relationship between tiger and animal. Animal is more abstract than tiger because it is more general, and tiger is more specific. So when we categorize tigers and we categorize animals, we always abstract from something. So we put together different tigers and put together different kinds of animals. This level of abstraction is stronger at the superordinate level, so at the level of animal. So there is always some kinds of abstraction. At the same time, however, it is this process of abstraction, we think it is different from abstractness. Abstractness refers to the characteristics of specific concepts, of specific domains. So concepts like freedom, fantastic, truth, hope, etc. So abstraction is related, but not the same as abstractness. Abstraction is something vertical, so that goes to more general, to more specific, where abstractness pertains to specific domain. What is then abstractness? What is then abstractness? Obviously, we don't think there is a dichotomy between concrete and abstract concept. What is then abstractness? I'll try to use, we did a nice publication in the last years. It was a publication for children. So Frontiers for Young Mind, we were asked to write a paper on abstract concepts for them. And it was really nice. So we tried to summarize in a picture what we intend with abstract concepts, so with abstractness. And so here, clearly, we try to oppose concrete and abstract concept, but as I said, we do not think there is a dichotomy. So first, concrete elements like trees, like chairs, etc. The category typically includes many common elements, whereas abstract concepts, for example, freedom, the elements do not have so much in common. This is the first characteristic. Second, they are all grounded in the five senses. So they all evoke the five senses, both concrete and abstract concepts. But as you can see in the picture, concrete concepts evoke them more to a larger extent. To give you an idea here, we ask people whether with abstract and concrete concept, they do think of perceptual modalities, so the five senses. And as you can see, they evoke the five senses also in the case of abstract concept, but less. So they evoke the five senses, but to a lower extent. But abstract concepts typically evoke more inner experiences, so interoception, emotions, etc., more than concrete concepts. They are more imaginable. Concrete concepts, compared to abstract concepts, are more imaginable. And words referring to them are typically more iconic compared to abstract words. Abstract words are typically acquired later, and they are acquired linguistically rather than perceptually. Typically, people, I'll go back to this later, are more confident in meaning of concrete concepts. So I know better what a bottle is than what freedom is. So I'm more certain of my knowledge of bottles compared to my knowledge of freedom. And And also we think, I'm not going into this in this seminar, but if you want, we can discuss it later. And also we think that abstract concepts are more variable across cultures compared to concrete concepts. Why? Because for concrete concepts, language is less relevant, cultural aspects are less relevant, they have a bounded object as reference, whereas abstract concepts do not have a single object as reference. Interrupt me at any time if you want. Okay, abstract concepts differ. There are different kinds of abstract concepts. There is some people here who has extensively worked on this. We also did a lot of studies on different kinds of abstract concepts. I'm not going into this extensively. I'm telling you something on this, but I'm not focusing specifically on this. Examples of kinds of abstract concepts: numerical concepts, philosophical concepts, moral and aesthetic concepts, etc. There might be broader and smaller partitions: social context, emotional concepts, etc. So what we think is that there is not a dichotomy, concrete versus abstract, but that different kinds of abstract concepts are characterized by multiple elements, and they can be sort of represented as points in a multidimensional space. So, for example, emotional concepts, for emotional concepts, the role of interoception weighs a lot. For magnitude concepts, numerical concepts, it doesn't. So that's basically the idea. Okay, so we did this proposal, we presented this proposal, a theoretical proposal on abstract concepts. So I summarized the main points, and then here I'm going to focus on, as I said, abstract concept and social uncertainty and social interaction. So it's called word as social tools. So the idea is that words can work as tools, as instruments that impact the environment surrounding us. And in the case of abstract concept, it has three main tenets. First tenet, abstract concepts are grounded, so evoke sensory motor experiences. So they evoke the five senses, even if to a lower extent compared to concrete sentences, to concrete words. But they evoke more inner experiences. Okay, so more interoception. We did some studies on this. As I said, it's not a major point here. Second point, which is really crucial for this view. Linguistic and social experiences are more important for abstract than for concrete concepts. Why? Because when we acquire concepts, abstract concepts, we need others, because I don't know what freedom is, so I need someone explaining to me what freedom is. Whereas I need less someone to tell me what bottles is, because bottles are perceptually similar. So linguistic and social experiences qualifying is pivotal for their representation and also for their use. So social experience is crucial for their use. And also, we think the third tenet is that abstract concepts are more flexible across context and language. So because they don't have a specific referent. So they are more variable across context, and they are characterized by higher linguistic diversity. These are the main tenets. Again, something theoretical. As I said, we think that words are tools that impact the environment surrounding us. So words are tools in many respects, because thanks to words, we perceive the world differently. So, for example, if there is someone far away that I do not distinguish well, and somebody tells me the word, Gary Lupian has shown, for example, that words help us identify that something. So they are physical tools. We also found that words change the perception of our close and far space. Okay, so they are physical tools. But we think that in the case of abstract concept, what is really important is that words are inner tools and social tools. What does it mean, inner tools? That with abstract concepts, we probably speak a lot with ourselves to re-explain ourselves the meaning, to re-elaborate the meaning, etc. And so they help us expanding our cognition. And they are social tools because they promote social interaction. I'm going into this so later. We think that there are two different ways to address the role of social interaction for abstract concepts. Two different ways, and I'm going to focus on the first. The first is based on a notion that we call social metacognition. So the character of abstract concept is not determined, is not clear. So we might need others more in order to understand their meaning. I'll show you later some evidence backing in this. And so we need others during their acquisition, we need others during their use because we have to renegotiate their meaning. This is one way to intend the role of social interaction for abstract concept. There is another way in which we intend the role of social interaction for abstract concept. That is, we can say that abstract concepts are more grounded in social situations compared to other concepts. And here there is some people who has worked on this extensively. There are some studies also by the group of Penny Paxman who has shown this, that abstract words might evoke social information. To make an example, if we had to make an example from a database, so if you can ask people, how much do you need others to understand the meaning of the word or to process the meaning of the word? Or how much does this concept evoke social circumstances? So in the first case, you refer to a mechanism which is important for acquisition and use. In the second case, you refer to social information as a mechanism of grounding. So I think that's thinking of the word feast, I activate social information. And we think we are working on this. I didn't focus the seminar on this because we are not ready ready yet. But we think that this might lead to a further partition of abstract concepts, not numerical versus emotional versus social, etc., but more determined and more undetermined, more vague and more determined. But I clarify it because here it's this is really speculative, but we are working on it. So we have very preliminary data on this. So basically the idea is there are some concepts like, for example, I don't know, a team or a party that are they are abstract, but grounded in social situations. So you evoke social situations. Whereas there are some concepts like freedom, for which you might evoke social situations, but you might evoke also a different variety of situations. But you might need others in order to understand freedom. Why? Because you don't have a reference. So you need someone helping you to understand the different varieties of concepts that are involved there. Okay, this is the first point. The second point is that in the case of freedom, in the case of freedom, for example, compared to number, also in the case of number, you need others. But in the case of freedom, you might need others not only to acquire the notion, but also to continue processing the notion. So I don't know what you intend with freedom, but I know what you intend with free. Okay, so we had the same socialization process. At the beginning, nobody of us knew what to intend with, maybe free subitizing 10. But we agree more on what we intend with 10 than what we intend with freedom. And so this is an intrinsic vagueness of some abstract concepts, probably not all abstract concepts. And we are working on this. So there might be a partition between these two big kinds of abstract concepts. Okay, this is, take it as speculative so far, because we are working on ratings and with some studies in order to investigate whether with vague abstract concept we might need others more. So we might feel more the need to interact with others in order to negotiate the meaning. Okay. Okay, let me go through what we said so far. So I started saying that concepts are flexible, and then I tried to define abstract concepts, abstractness, abstraction, and abstractness. I presented this proposal and focused on social interaction, so the importance of linguistic and social interaction. I tried to distinguish between socialness and social metacognition and said that this might lead to a new partition within abstract concepts. Okay, now I'm going further with evidence, etc., into the idea that when we acquire and process abstract concepts, we might need others more. So this idea of social metacognition and the idea of uncertainty and interaction. Okay, so what happens when we acquire abstract concepts? This is an example. These are my children when they are very, very small. And the idea is the following. Take a concept like ball. This is Luca, and it was quite easy for him to understand what ball is, even without me or us or other people around. So it was easier for him to understand what balls are because he had perceptual experiences of different sort of balls that were somehow perceptually similar. Different but perceptually similar. Whereas in the case of fantasy, Lola had a lot of difficulties would have a lot of difficulties to understand what fantasy is without having someone telling her, look, these are situations that refer to fantasy. Okay, so this is basically the idea of acquisition. The idea of acquisition is in order to acquire abstract concept, you need others more because the support of others is more important to fill the gaps that perceptual information has. Perceptual to support support you in the absence of perceptual similarities between category members.
Can I ask one in between question? To learn abstract concepts, you need more the support of others, or you need more the support of language and linguistic experience?
Both.
Both.
So, a very good question. Thank you so much. So we think that you need more the support of, so we intend language as a holistic experience. So as an experience which includes also the social experience. But the question is clearly very relevant because one thing is learning abstract concept when you're young. Another thing is learning abstract concept when you are adults, and you might learn abstract concept through Wikipedia. So, for example, so we think that language is crucial in any case. We tend to think of language not only in terms of word associations, but also in terms of the social experience. Yeah, interaction. This doesn't mean that word association cannot, when you're adult, cannot tell you something on, cannot include some hints to social interaction. So, but yes.
Just follow up on acquisition, which I think is very relevant. For concrete object, we know that there are clear bias in learning. So we have the wall object bias. If we say ball, no one will ever think that the red part of the ball will be called ball. Is that something similar on the abstract things like events versus situations versus attitudes versus ideological events? And there is an hierarchy or...
So you think, let me rephrase your question if I understood well. So you think, so you are suggesting it is a distinction between objects and situations, events, etc.
I don't know if, I mean, in the abstract concepts, what they label, the name will, we try to label abstract concepts as somehow biased, the same way it's biased the way we are referring label to concrete objects. like the wall object bias. And I was thinking about if you prefer to attribute an abstract name to a situation, to a state, to an event which is teleological, to an aptitude. So I don't know if all these terms, which are pretty common
So I cannot. Thinking of your question, I think it would be interesting to test that. I don't think it has been really tested, but it can give an idea for testing this. So you present something and you see what do people produce. So it is clear that social situations are considered more abstract than situations, and events are typically considered more abstract than concrete elements. Consider, however, that also numbers are typically included within abstract concepts. So people evaluate them as abstract, less abstract than freedom, so to say, or fantasy. So there is, as I said, there is no dichotomy, but there is a progression from objects to situations, and to situations that are more and more indeterminate. I don't know whether I answered.
Yeah.
Yes.
You said before,
I'm going into that deeper.
As you know, I think that we acquire abstract concepts used also in an implicit way from different situations, events, also just dealing in a passive way of this situation. How these two kinds of acquisition modalities interact with each other, and how to test this implicit way to acquire abstract concepts.
Oh, that's a question for later. No, but it's a very important question. I think that both aspects are occur. So it's not just that you need others. It's also that you somehow put together situations that you have experienced. So I'm not saying that they are not grounded. So they are grounded in experiences. But in order to put these experiences together, the hint given by others is particularly crucial, is particularly important. That's the idea. It's not that there is no grounding. So if I think of freedom, I think of running on the grass, exiting from prison, etc. So you might think of different situations, but the point is exiting from prison and running on the grass don't have much in common. So in order to find these common elements, I might need social interaction. I don't know whether I answered, at least for now. Okay, so this is the acquisition. So the role of language, I go back to the question by Valentina, the role of language. So across various studies, we wanted to test the importance of language in abstract concepts. And across various studies, we found that if people answer to single words, single concrete and abstract words, with a device that involves the mouth versus the hand, they tend to be to respond faster to concrete words with the hands and to abstract words with the mouth. This is exactly what we predicted, because we thought if language is more involved in the representation of abstract concepts, then they should evoke more the mouth compared to the hand. I'll show you an example of a study, but we found these results across different studies. So studies mimicking conceptual acquisition in adults, a definition matching task, I'll show it to you, word recognition task. We didn't find an effect with lexical decision, probably because, as Federico was saying yesterday, it is the level of processing is quite superficial. So let me make an example of one of these studies we did some years ago. So you are in front of the computer screen, you see a fixation cross, then you see a definition, which might be abstract or concrete, then you see a word, which is concrete or abstract. And you have to answer whether the word matches the definition or not. Okay, in order to answer, you have to answer either with a hand to push a button as fast as possible, or you have to squeeze something within your lips. This is something used for paraplegics. You have to squeeze this something to use the mouth to respond. So yes, the word matches with the definition. No, the word doesn't match with the definition. Okay.
Between subjects, some with
It was within, but in different blocks. Okay, what did we find? So first of all, I have to say that when they responded with the hand, they were always faster, but because of the device. So the squeezing required a little bit more effort. But in the case of abstract words, we found that the difference in response time between the mouth and the hand responses was less pronounced. So basically, it is as if with abstract concept, you activated more the mouth motor system, activated more the mouth. Okay. So as I said, we found these similar results. This is what an example, this example of facilitation with the mouth across a lot of studies. Okay. Then at some point we started to say, okay, we found this facilitation, but is it really crucial to use the mouth in order to respond to abstract concepts? And so we tried to use some interference tasks. Okay. Different kinds of interference, online interference, offline interference. Online interference. So imagine you have to respond to an abstract concept while chewing a gum, for example, or pronouncing a syllable. You say ba, 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 and you have to decide whether the word is concrete or abstract. This is articulatory suppression. Okay. So we found that when we have an interference with the mouth, we tend to evaluate abstract words more difficult than if we don't, for example, chew a gum, okay? We also found an effect of articulatory suppression. I'll show you an example in a moment. I'll show you the example. The example is this. So we have two conditions between participants. Some manipulated the ball, and others had to pronounce a syllable ba 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 while deciding whether a word was concrete or abstract. And we found an effect which is not huge, but we found that in the case of abstract words, response times were slower when participants pronounced ba ba ba. Okay, in the case of a letter compared to the ball. Here we didn't find the interaction. In a pilot study, actually, we found an interaction. So we found that participants were slower with the ball with concrete concepts and slower with the articulatory suppression with abstract concepts. Not here. So the result is present, but it's not so strong. Okay, we tried online interference. We also tried offline interference. Offline interference, so we designed some tasks with children in which we use the pacifier. So we thought children who use the pacifier for long, this is not the recipe. This study doesn't have any consequence as to parenting style, etc. So
this study, when I consider that my daughter is still using the pacifier.
Okay, no. Okay, so it doesn't have any. So we tested children. We have different studies on this. For example, a study on 6 years old, a study on 8 years old. In 6 years old, the definition task, we found that children who had used the pacifier for longer tended to define abstract concepts slightly different. So they were as accurate as the others, but the produced features were slightly different. And also we found in a categorization task, this is an example of a categorization task. We found that with abstract concepts, children who use the pacifier for longer, they are slightly slower. There is no recipe on this, but it could be that that because language is so important for abstract concepts, it could be that it has an impact on processing, a specific impact on processing of abstract concepts. So these interference tasks have an impact. Does this lead us to say that language is absolutely part of the representation of abstract concepts, etc.? I think we need to think further. So we are at this point. But the point I wanted to underline is this. We found across different tasks, both in facilitation and interference paradigms, that in the case of abstract concept, participants were either facilitated or interfered more when the mouth motor system was involved. And mouth is associated with language. Are we the only ones the only lab who found this? No, there are other labs. For example, there is a study in the lab of Tettamanti by Marta Guio and colleagues some years ago with ratings showing that abstract concepts are more associated with the mouth effector, particularly mental states concepts. There are some studies in the lab of Penny Paxman showing that the degree to which a concept is experienced, if a concept is experienced a lot with the mouth, then this facilitates acquisition of abstract compared to concrete concepts. There is also an fMRI study in the lab by Friedemann Pulver-Müller who has shown that abstract mental concept activates a lot the mouth motor system. So it seems that there is this association between abstract concept and mouth, which can testify that language plays a major role in the case of abstract compared to concrete concept. So how do we interpret this evidence? And here I come to our proposal. So basically the idea is the following. I'll present it theoretically and then I'll go into. So basically the idea is, suppose that, so the case of acquisition I think is clear. In the case of acquisition, we don't have a reference, so we need others. But what happens during use? So what happens if I'm speaking with you about representation or about abstract concepts? So something abstract, what happens? So we are less confident, more uncertain on the meaning of abstract concepts. What does it mean? Maybe I know what I mean, I don't know what you mean. And so there is this uncertainty going on in the relationship between us. Or you might tell me freedom, I don't know what you intend with freedom. And so what do I do, first of all? I search innerly for meaning. So I search for meaning, and it is, people recurrently find concreteness effects, no? Part of this concreteness effect can be explained by a longer search for meaning. So I search longer for various meaning. What is freedom? Freedom is this and this, freedom is that and that. What is bottle? Bottle, this. Okay, so we think that here inner speech might play a role. So we might inner search for meaning, and we might also need to interact with ourselves. So we speak with ourselves. To make an example, here we did a picture. We call this with Charles Ferneyhough inner social metacognition. Social metacognition. So metacognition is an inner process. We reason on our cognition. It is social because we interact with ourselves, but it is inner because it's simply with ourselves. What does this word mean? Not sure. Does it mean this? Does it mean that? We could interact with ourselves. So a possibility is that we use inner speech more in the case of abstract compared to concrete concepts. And this might help to explain this association of mouth and abstract concept. Might, but we have to understand it better. Suppose that, so in the case of abstract concept, we are more uncertain. We are less confident. But suppose we don't come to a solution. What is freedom? I know what is for me, but I don't know what is for Federico. And so we need others. We need others. Why? We need others to acquire. And so here the role of linguistic deference. So I defer to you who are experts on metaphors, because I'm not expert on metaphors. And so I need to rely more on others. And mouth motor system might be involved in all these processes. So it can be that I want to ask you information on metaphors. It can be that I don't know what you mean with metaphors, and I want to learn from you, or we might discuss, because I start from abstract concept, you start from metaphor, and we have to discuss this. Or I might only need what you intend with the metaphors, because I have my idea of metaphors, and you might have a different idea. So these social processes, so basically the idea is there is a symmetric process and an asymmetric process. So the child who asks her mom, what do you mean? Sure, that means. And this is metacognition, social metacognition. But it could be also two people who negotiate the meaning. So it could be asymmetric or symmetric. So two people who negotiate the meaning and co-build the meaning. And this is what I think is very important, very nice in abstract concepts. So that we always negotiate the meaning of words. And if not us, others previously to us have negotiated the meaning of words. But in the case of abstract concept, I think that in particularly vague abstract concept, we might need to negotiate them continuously. And that's what is link them with social interaction. So to summarize, in order to comprehend an abstract concept, we think that first you search innerly for meaning, might be through dialogic inner speech, searching in working memory, etc. Then you might search meaning in others, either asking for information or negotiating the meaning or trying to understand what the other means, etc. This is the idea. What is the evidence on this? It's not much. So I'll tell you what we try to do. First of all, we ask people in a variety of studies, we ask people, how much do you need others in the case of these words? We had concrete and abstract words. And this is, for example, a database we had on abstract concept. The first name is Caterina Villani. We had we submitted participants with more than 400 abstract concepts, and had them evaluate on various dimensions, like imageability, abstractness, concreteness, contextual availability, so the classical ones, but also body-object interaction, the five senses, hand, mouth involvement, interoception, metacognition, emotional aspects, social aspects, social metacognition. We call social metacognition how much you need others. And what we found, you see here, there is this principal component analysis, three component solution, and the first component is the component related to abstractness, concreteness. And as you can see, I'll explain it. As you can see, abstractness, concreteness, abstractness is characterized by late age of acquisition, linguistic modality of acquisition, and mass social metacognition. So need of others. Compared to concreteness, which is characterized by contextual availability, by imageability, and by body-object interaction. So the other components, one is component related to the five senses plus the hand factor, and another component which we called inner grounding, which includes interoception, emotions, etc. Okay, so basically what we found that one hallmark of abstractness is the need of others. We need others. We found it across different studies. I'll tell you the story very quickly. This is a study we did for COVID. So we had a bunch of words, rating of a bunch of words, and these words were related to COVID. So they were not selected based on abstractness, concreteness. So we had words like, for example, diseases, religious concepts, emotionals, these are abstract, but also social professions, for example, scientists, because it was relevant for COVID, doctors, nurse, teacher, prime minister, etc. So a bunch of words, around 100 words relevant for COVID. And we asked participants to rate them across various dimensions. And here we included also a measure of confidence, how certain you are, how confident you are in the meaning of words, and how confident you are in the meaning of expert, in the fact that experts master the meaning of this word. And what we found here, this is a correlogram, we found that when people are more confident when words activate the body-object interaction. They are more confident in expert when words are imaginable and where the context is available. And concreteness so is related to body-object interaction, imaginability, and contextual availability. While abstractness is negatively correlated with body-object interaction, and body-object interaction is negatively correlation with need for others. So basically, more body, less abstract, less confidence, so more uncertainty, more need for others. So in the case of abstract concept, we are more uncertain, we need others more. Okay, here is an example. We did a PCA, and the first dimension we found was indeed the dimension of abstractness, concreteness. Here you can see some examples of the words, religion versus, for example, family, mother, etc. So family, mother, I'm very confident, I'm very certain. In the case of religion, herd immunity, transmission rate, etc., I'm less confident, these words are more abstract, etc. Again, another study we did a couple of years ago, again, we found that abstract words, people think they are more uncertain, they need others more, and also we found that these words are more open to negotiations. So people think that these words might change depending on the opinion of the people. Again, a rating study. Okay, so we have this rating showing that people perceive abstract words as more, so that we need others more in the case of abstract words. Okay, but then we thought, okay, we are studying abstract words, we think they elicit interesting social dynamics. But in order to do this, we really need interactive tasks. Because in our literature, so in the literature of abstract concept, there are people use very interesting tasks, but very classical tasks. Rating, we also use them consistently. So we think they lead to interesting results, but we think that we need to go a bit beyond. So ratings, feature listing, some of the tasks I described so far. So definitions, for example, lexical decision, property verification, etc. These are the classical tasks that are used in this literature. Is it sufficient to understand the social dynamics that abstract concept might elicit? To some extent, yes, to some extent, no. So what we would like to do, we did some early attempt and we are trying to do some more. We think that new methods are necessary. So we are writing overall that new methods are necessary, etc. Okay, so we tried to do some studies. This is a developmental study in which we use an interactive method, in which we test, for example, this is a database, not very updated because it's a database by Vogel, in which we took some data from real mother-child interactions, and we transcribed all the aspects of the interaction, and we coded the abstract words that young children use, very young children. So we have 3 groups, 12, 15 months, 16, 18 months, 21 months, sorry, 4 groups, 19, 21 months, and 22, 24 months. So children were from 1 to 2 years of age. And what did we do? We coded them according to their abstractness. What happened? Obviously, they didn't use freedom, they didn't use justice, but they use at 15 months, the first types of abstract words are no, yes, I, me, all done, all gone. So we consider them more abstract than bottom. Okay, some numbers. Around 20 months, action verbs, cook, drink, sing, round, some reference to internal states, etc. Okay, this is an example, but it's just to say that we attempted to start with some interactive task. This is an example of a task in which mother and child interact freely. There is no questionnaires delivered to parents, etc. It's just that we observe it. A very classical one. We did also some studies with thermal imaging, but I'm not good on it, suggesting that children this was a simple lexical decision task, but we had thermal imaging, suggesting that children with abstract concept, there is a higher involvement of the parasympathetic system. I'm not going to discuss this because I'm not good at this, so the collaborators, experts in thermal imaging, said that the result was according to the predictions. An example of another interactive task. This is a bit complex, so this is a kinematics task, a combination of two tasks. So let me start. First of all, so participants were presented with images, and the images refer to a concrete or to an abstract words, and they had to guess. Okay. And then they were asked to rate whether guessing were more difficult in the case of abstract or concrete words without being told that they were abstract and concrete. And they found more difficult the case of abstract words, both in the subjective rating, and effectively they needed more time to guess abstract than to guess concrete. And they were combined with an experimenter. There were two experimenters. They were obviously everything was balanced, etc. So in the case of these two experimenters, they gave them hints. So they could rely on the experimenter to receive some suggestions. Okay. Then they were told that a kinematics phase, a joint action task would follow. And in the joint action task, each experimenter guided an avatar. Okay. It's complex, guided an avatar. And they were presented with a bottle. Imagine we have a bottle here. And I and you have to grasp the bottle at the same time. In some situation, I can lead. In some situation, we both are. And we have to grasp it at the same time. So you have to pay attention not to grasp it where I do grasp it, etc. Okay. So we have to coordinate ourselves. And what did we find? We found that so there were two different blocks, concrete block, abstract block. So when participants had received suggestions that were in the block of abstract concepts, they tended to be more synchronous with the experimenter, with the movements of the avatar guided with the experimenter who had introduced them, helped them with abstract concepts, compared to the experimenter who had introduced them with concrete concepts. So basically, there was this stronger movement synchrony in joint action with the person helping them to guess abstract compared to concrete concepts. So it seems that in the case of abstract concept, you need others more, and so you tend to be more synchronous because you need them more, so you tend to be more in line with them, to follow them more. Okay, this is the idea. Is this strong evidence? Is this partially strong evidence? First, because the evidence is strong, but not very strong. So the results are strong, but not very strong, first. And second, because it is a study that pertains guessing from images. So it's sort of, I don't want to say obvious, but it's clear that it's more difficult to infer an abstract concept from an image than a concrete concept. So, okay, so we attempted some other interactive task. This is only partially interactive again. So, online task during COVID, we started. Participants received sentences like, I made a cake, concrete, food. I bought an umbrella, I saw a lion, or I calculated the area, I thought about destiny, I felt shame. Okay, concrete versus abstract, different kinds of concrete, different kinds of abstract. And then they were told, imagine to respond to the sentence, they had to write it, to write down a response, as if the other person was a friend, an acquaintance. What did they answer? They answered, we computed the uncertainty expressions, and we found that in the case of abstract concept, they, especially the more abstract concepts, so philosophical, religious, etc., they use more uncertainty, so etc. They tended to ask more why questions rather than where and when questions in the case of abstract concepts. And they had only one term, but they replied asking for more. So tell me more in the case of abstract concepts. So they said they seem to rely more on others. Okay, so we wanted to test it with a more, with a different task. Same studies. It's a novel study, this one. We will present it at Cogci this year, so it's novel. We have to write it down, so for a paper. So we had sentences, again, abstract and concrete. We balance them for familiarity, naturalness of sentences, etc. And we asked participants, does this combination plausibly occur in a real conversation? And we measure plausibility judgment and response time. So imagine the following situation. I saw a lion, I did not understand. I saw a lion, good job. Versus, I have experience of shame. I do not understand. I feel shame, good job. Okay. So certainty versus uncertainty. Is it clear? Stop me if it's not clear. Okay. What did we find? We find that with abstract sentences, uncertainty follow-ups are evaluated more plausible and they are faster. Curiosity. So with abstract concept, we tend to rely on others more. So I saw a lion. Describe it. Or okay. Describe it. I am more curious. Okay. Stop. It's more plausible in the case of abstract concept to want to have a follow-up that leads you to continue than in the case of concrete concepts. And this is what we found. So basically, in the case of abstract concept, what did we find? We found that participants, both in spontaneous writing and when they have to process sentences, they evaluate more plausible situations in which the respondent is more uncertain on one side and is more curious on the other. So wants to go on with the conversation. Okay, I'll focus on the last one and then lead to conclusion. Okay, so with abstract concept so far, what did I say? I said, people feel less confident. People seem to want to rely more on others. But we are asking ourselves, this is a study, a very recent study, do we rely more on experts? And is this reliance on expert due, for example, to the indeterminacy of concepts? So can be extended beyond abstract concepts. And so we have this study, I mentioned it because some of you work on ecological concepts. So we had, in this case, we had classical, abstract, and concrete concepts as a comparison, but we have also ecological concepts like climate change, desertification, pollution, etc., and geographical and geopolitical concepts like desert, ocean, metropolis, plus natural concept and technological concept. And we ask the same thing. So abstractness, concreteness, familiarity, emotionality, it's a rating study. Some ratings addressing the social dimension, social valence, political relevance, and some ratings, this is important for us, addressing the metacognitive dimension. So how much you need others, how much you feel certain, how much you are confident in expert, how difficult you find defining the word, how much you need experts. So how much you really need, think you need experts, not other general others, but expert. Okay, as you can see, here, these ecological words, for example, and also some technological words, but particularly ecological words, are considered very abstract. And this is interesting for us because this notion of abstractness is extended. They are very abstract. And for older people, these are new data, they are even more no, for all the people, technological are more abstract and ecological are a bit less abstract compared to younger. So that's, but I don't have this data here. Okay, so what did we find here? What we were interested in, I'm not going into details into this PCA, but the first dimension of the PCA we did, again, we found this opposition between abstract and concrete. And with more abstract, we need others more, and we need experts more. If we go into details on the data, what can we see? So look at ecological concepts. They are compared here, as you can see, with technological and other concepts. Look, ecological concepts, apparently they are not so abstract, no? But they seem to behave like abstract. This is really interesting to us, also because it can explain some failures in pro-environmental behaviors. So people need others a lot, need experts a lot. They consider them a lot, very scientific. They think they are politically relevant. They are not confident in knowing them. They are the pink ones, sorry, the pink ones, the pink ones.
The light pink, pink.
And they are not confident that experts know. So they want to rely on others. They want to rely on experts, but at the same time, they don't trust them. Okay, so that is, we think, interesting. So, and we think what is interesting is that in the case of concepts, abstract concepts, but also this is an extended notion of, these are not the typical abstract concepts. So, so it seems that there is this social dimension, so this importance of others. Interestingly, I don't have the other graph, but they activate the mouth more, ecological concept, compared to the other concepts. Okay, so with the more concepts are abstract, the more, or are perceived as abstract, the more we need others, and the more also possibly we need to outsource our knowledge to others. I come to a conclusion. So what did I try to say? I tried to say that first, abstract concrete distinction is important. It's not dichotomous, but we always find it. So even if in words that were not thought as abstract and concrete, we always find this dimension being important. But this distinction can be flexible. And as I said yesterday, we have some data showing that it might depend on the expertise. With abstract concept, we need others more. We need others more, in particular, when we feel less confident and more uncertain. And we certainly need others to acquire all abstract concepts, numbers, freedom, religious concepts, etc. But what happens after acquisition? It is possible, we are working on this, that we need others more with more vague concepts, with more vague abstract concepts. Do we need others more for concepts related to science than technology? For example, we found that ecological concepts perceived as scientific are much more abstract than technological concepts. I can master computers very well. I can rely on the expert of computers, but I cannot rely on the expert. I need the expert, but I cannot rely on him or her because it's a matter that it's not, that I cannot, I know that even he or her cannot master it fully. When do we need experts? When do we trust them? So we need further evidence. And we think that it should be based on interactive tasks. And here, so I was telling this morning to Valentina, so I think that we really want to go also to investigate not only, to use not only classical studies, but really to investigate use of concepts. And for this, really, we think that pragmatic, more information on pragmatics for us would be really important. So I conclude with the sentence. It's from the book, but okay. It's the idea of abstract concepts. So this is what I think. I think that abstract words are the maximum example of what Guy Dove called the malleable and sophisticated nature of human cognition. More than with other kinds of words, with abstract words, we are free to build their meaning, going beyond what is predetermined and given. crucially, this building process does not occur on its own. We can create new words, but need others to support us, share meanings, insert constraints, and contrast and conflict with us. More than other words, abstract words highlight how meaning is socially constructed. More than other words, they show that words can make us free and that we become free together with others. So I really think that, yeah, subtitles could be the freedom of words, so the freedom of abstract words. And this is the outline for the presentation. And I think.
Joanna, for this wonderful presentation that gave an enormous number of ideas and inspirations to all of us. There was a variety of paradigms that you no, absolutely. The topic was clear and the outline was clear, and I'm pretty sure everyone got a lot of ideas and inspiration. So time for questions. Federico.
Yes, I have at least two questions. The first one is related to the concept stability when you put concepts like abstract concepts in the context of sentences. So I was wondering. Okay, I was wondering whether you have data on the dimensions like social metacognition on abstract concepts that are presented in literal descriptions or definitions, like, for instance, I don't know, an algebraic concept that is presented with its definition, to see, as you were suggesting, whether the participants need to rely on social interaction in that case or not. So the stability of these dimensions when you move from the single word level to the sentence level. This was my first question.
Okay.
The second question is whether you have ever thought of using metaphors or other figurative language expressions, because I see many similarities between abstract concepts and metaphors, like open metaphors that are quite vague in their interpretation, or even proverbs, because I would love to see an interaction task with people interacting about the meaning of an unfamiliar proverb, what the proverb might mean. So these are my questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. Both very important. So in the first case, actually, we don't have much evidence on sentences, on social metacognition in sentences. We have the study with Caterina Villani, etc., where we have sentences. So we test them, but we don't have an idea of what happens. We are currently, collecting in not various experiments, but more than one, at least 3 experiments, data on conversations. So a real conversation. So a conversation in family. In one case, we have a study with families. So the parents has to explain, for example, what is a given concept to a child. Then they have to negotiate it together, etc. So we have some data on that. And they are a bit tricky, because there what is complex is the fact that maybe they start from freedom, but then they go. So I think it would be great to have control data on, for example, social metacognition related to sentences. So that's a very good point. The second, metaphors. So as I was telling yesterday, so my first experiment in psychology was an experiment.
But I couldn't find it in your reference list. Was it published eventually? Or you were hiding it?
Channel. Oh. But my first experiments were on metaphors, because I started to work with a professor who worked on metaphors. Then I shifted. So for my dissertation, I shifted to categorization, etc. But I started with metaphors, and no, we did one study with Laura Barca, but it was mainly her work, in which we tried to, but it was minor study, so we didn't comparing literal and metaphorical sentences. But I think I do really agree that there are many common aspects. So also this uncertainty, etc., could probably apply to. I don't know, but so I think there are really many common aspects that characterize processing, because the point is abstract concepts are difficult, and like probably you are expert, I'm not, but open metaphors are difficult. So it's the similarities, definitely. So thank you.
Chatai Chora.
Well, thank you so much. So you talked about this social interaction. I was wondering if it's really the social interaction or the interaction itself. So if we were to will we be able to solve this need for interaction using chatbots? Like, I don't know, large language models.
Okay.
And another question is, if so, so for example, if people knew they were talking to AI or they thought they were talking to a human, would that make any difference as well?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question, and we are working on those. No, so we one of these interactive tasks is a task in which people, no, it's not a chat box. So in which people interact chatting. So they chat online. So one of these studies we have done in which they chat online. I didn't develop this last part on knowledge outsourcing, but so I didn't develop it, but one open issue is really that. So the point is, which are the experts? So who do we consider expert? And the expert obviously not obviously, but the expert can be natural, can be artificial. To what extent do you rely on the other person? And yeah, it opens a bunch of issues that are very important. So and also this social experience that characterizes relationship with others. To what extent can we find it again in an artificial device? Can we, because we have experiences with social experience, can we somehow retrieve this experience and somehow, yeah, that's a possibility. But that's definitely a very interesting question.
Chiara Ballattieri.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's really a lot of interesting ones. And so I would like to ask for a clarification. And I'm trying to put together two things that you said. One is with regard to the many different dimensions according to which a word can be abstract. So you said it can be abstract in terms of so there was a very nice slide abstracts in terms of emotions, or abstracts in terms of social constructs, and so all the other dimensions. And then you said on the other hand that this feature interacts with the activation of the multiple system. So I'm interested in understanding better if any kind of any of these dimension has the same effect on the motor system, or if there's some dimension of abstractness that interacts more.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So yeah, I didn't go into details on the differences between abstract concepts here. There are people who are really very expert on this into that. Recently, we are working mostly on different kinds of concepts. So different kinds of abstract and different kinds of concrete concepts. So here I maintain the presentation at the, so just to make this opposition, but it's not a real opposition. So there are sub-kinds. For example, in the case of the interactive task, we found more effects with philosophical concepts, philosophical, which are the most abstract among the abstract. So so I didn't present a study in which we measured verbal interference, and we wanted to test exactly that, but we didn't find a difference between the different kinds of concepts. It is possible that this task was not sufficiently disruptive, etc. Personally, I would hypothesize that the mouth motor system would be more involved in the more abstract, among the abstract. Then I don't know, but
you need to find the specific task.
Yes. And if I can say, so until 2 years ago, for example, our main point, 3 years ago, our main point was the mouth. Now it's not the mouth. The main point is not the mouth, but the main point is the need for other and the outsourcing. If I had, so that
This is very relevant, I think, sorry, just to follow up, because of the work with the patients and the effect of rehabilitation, motor rehabilitation, and the effect that this kind of interaction has on the language of patients.
Yes.
So I guess the choice of words of the therapist could, according to what I'm understanding now, could affect the way in which these patients succeed in their rehabilitation.
That's a very interesting point, and
We will go.
Fortunata Romeo has a question that probably is related.
Main question, about concept stability. Can concreteness of the concept change if the sensory motor source of this concept change as limitation? For example, the concept of the body is very concrete, I think, but what we see is that if there is a motor impairment, the words that the patient used to describe body are more abstract according with your definition. So, for example, they use less words referring to sense. They can't imagine only. They are more emotive about the body. So, what are these features? So, the idea is that they speak of the body, but we say in a more abstract way. There is no body in there, and they are more less confident of their body. They ask the therapist, "Is correct? Is the so?" This is the question.
That's a very good question. What we think is that, so until some years ago, people said, what are abstract concepts? Abstract concepts are concepts that are more detached from sensory motor experiences, okay, compared to concrete concepts. Or another view was abstract concepts are the words that do not refer to a concrete and bounded element as referent. And that was it. Now, in the last years, I think that some new views are emerging, showing that there are many composite dimensions that might be differently activated, etc. And I'm also convinced that concreteness and abstractness, to some extent, not totally, but to some extent can vary. As I said, we have some data on experts showing that the more you are expert, the more you consider something concrete, and the less you're expert, the more you consider it as abstract. And this is very interesting for ecological concepts. We found, for example, that they are considered quite abstract. So people don't seem to act sufficiently because so these are also practical implications. So I think that this idea of variability involves also the abstractness and concreteness, definitely. And also, I think that there is no dichotomy. So there is no dichotomy means that also in the concept of bottle, there is something, certainly something abstract, or in the concept of exchange, there is something concrete. So it's not so clear cut. Laura?
It's related to the different biological concepts. So we generally try to identify social concepts, ecological concepts, and so on. After using everything else, dimension, scale, as you know, we have found that a lot of abstract concepts are characterized by different dimensions. For example, I think that ecological concepts are also related or also characterized by the socialness. So we have a lot of concept, a multidimensional concept. So if you have an experience with this kind of concepts and how to investigate all these dimensions when we try to study them. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and it's complex. So in the case of abstract concept, we have 39 dimensions, including socialness, etc. I think we should, this is an effort that we should do collectively. We should come up with, we should find a way to group them. So to find some common elements that vary, but that they are less. So elements related to, I don't know, metacognitive aspects, elements related to social aspects. So to summarize them. At this point, I think it's not yet possible because we are still a bit exploring. But I think that a lot of steps have been done. So until 10 years ago, people said abstract concepts are monolith, so are single elements, and people studied only categories like natural kinds versus artifacts. Then they started to study food, and then they started to study differences within abstract concepts. So I think that a lot has been done, and I'm confident that that something will happen. Francesca Conca.
The different interactions that we can have, and also different types of interaction across culture, across languages. So my question is, what do you think about this issue? And do you think that these kind of differences between languages, between culture, might have a greater impact on our knowledge of some concept or not?
Yes, very good question. Yes, I agree. I didn't mention this aspect. We did some study on this, not on interaction, but for example on different on how people. We have a recent study on how people sort. We had an app, and participants had to sort concrete and abstract concepts. Different groups of concrete and abstract concepts in 2 or more categories, dragging the words into elements within the app. And we did it in Italian, Persian, and so Italian, Iranian, and in Hebraic. And we found interesting similarities, but also differences. And these differences were clearly more, so they had to sort and to mention the words. So, and these differences were clearly more pronounced in the case of abstract concept, which is what we expected. And there are some studies emerging showing this, that there are more differences across abstract concepts. There is also, however, for example, a study by Gary Lupian and Thompson, I think, which shows that this is not the case. So they find that there is not a higher variability of abstract concepts. But I think this depends a lot on the fact that we include with abstract concepts also magnitude concepts. And magnitude concepts are concepts that do not vary so much across cultures. So yes, and this is the reason why we are coming up with this. We are trying to investigate this distinction between more vague and less vague abstract concept. Because in the case of more vague, I think that the process of socialization continues. In the case of less vague, so order and vague, order. So in the case of less vague abstract concepts, once you have acquired the concept, it's that. And so it's no surprise that that the concept of 10 is the same for us and for Dutch people. I don't know, also not Western people, but.
Chiara Battaglini, she also has the right to ask a question.
She has a traditional.
Thank you, first of all, it was very interesting. A bit to link to the fact that we need a unifying account tool. So to overcome all of these parameters, what I think is fundamental is the distinction between abstractness and abstraction. And maybe that could be the point, like being more general, being more vague, abstract concepts are characterized by less properties as well. And that is probably why we need the others in order to understand in that context what we mean with freedom, for example. So I was thinking also in the example where there are conversations and people need to reply. With abstract concept, it's more like asking for more information. I'm wondering, giving a context to the abstract concept would maybe change, like doing, I don't know, I pass an exam, I'm happy, would be the same as I saw a line, like the reply would be the same.
Very good point, and I have an answer. So I have an answer. So we have a study, as you might know, we have this study. This was a study we started together, but that then there was one person who was in our lab who went to Mariana Bolognese's lab. And so we continued this study, as I said, with this certainty, uncertainty in this way. And this is one study, but we have another study in which we tested the specificity. And we have very preliminary data, but I'm very happy to say that this uncertainty is specific of abstract concepts, not of general concepts. So it doesn't pertain general concepts. So it's not a matter of, okay, animal, I have only few properties. No, it's a matter of freedom. I don't have, it's not that I have few properties, because animal, we have few properties, but they are common among us. But in the case of freedom, they are not. So I'm uncertain. I need to understand what you mean. You might have a liberal, you might be liberal, I might be socialist, whatever. And
you have to.
And we have to negotiate, we have to debate, we have to understand. At least to understand, to find a common ground, then you might conflict, etc. But what we say that it might be pro-social. It's not pro-social, it's just that we have to find a common ground, first of all. Whereas in the case of abstract in the term of general, I think it's less difficult. There might be certainly some similarities, but the uncertainty, I think, is less.
Okay, there are at least 3 other questions, but we are out of time. So please don't be angry at me, but I need to officially close the seminar. Anna, you generated a lot of
thank you so much. Thank you so much.
enthusiasm. That could be go on forever, but it's time to thank her.
Yes.